Hi, welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack Postgame. The Jazz tonight played against the Memphis Grizzlies in Salt Lake in the Delta Center, and the first half went fairly well. The second half, not so well. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So the first quarter especially, the first quarter went well. I thought the Jazz played well. The three balls were really going in. They made a bunch of threes in that first quarter. They were leading at the end of the first quarter. The second quarter was okay. I mean, it went reasonably well, and then the game was roughly tied at halftime. The second half did not go well at all, and it was pretty ugly. So there are individual plays, obviously, that are still nice, where players are doing things individually that are okay. But as a team, the team struggled to defend. The offense really didn't play very well in that second half. I mean, they didn't score a lot of points. So it was a struggle in that second half. But again, the Jazz are in a situation where they know they have to lose this game. I mean, they can't win a game at this point in the season at home against Memphis. They just can't do that. So they're in a situation where they have to lose. And so some of those games are going to really get out of hand because, yes, we want to see a more competitive game. I want to see a more competitive game. I don't want to see the team lose by 40. On the other hand, if you are playing lineups that you think are going to give you the best chance at, falling a few points behind in order to make sure that you lose this game, and then it may get out of hand, which tonight it obviously just got way out of hand, and it got ugly. And a much better scenario for the Jazz is if they can actually keep these games somewhat competitive and lose by 10 or less, rather than, if you just get blown out, it doesn't serve a whole lot of good. It just is ugly. And the players get disinterested and they get frustrated, and that's not good either. So you want the games to be, even though you want to lose, you still want the games to be competitive, and you want to see the guys learning and actually running some stuff and executing on both sides of the ball, rather than just get blown out by 40 and say, well, we're trying to lose. That's not the best case scenario. And that's kind of what happened tonight in the second half. It just turned into an absolute blowout, and it was just over. And at that point, there's like, well, what do you do? What are you gonna learn from this? And the guys obviously aren't happy, and to place the veteran players in a situation like that, they obviously don't want any part of that. So it was pretty ugly, and I wouldn't expect the Jazz to lose by 40 in a game where Morant is sitting on the bench for Memphis. He didn't even play in the game. He's clearly the number one factor on their team in terms of wins and losses. Do they have other good players? Yeah, they have other good players, but Morant's clearly the catalyst for that team in terms of their postseason hopes. So it just wasn't the greatest of games, but still, Collier, Filipowski, Sensabaugh, and Juzang all shot the ball reasonably well. They all shot 50% or better. Walker also shot 50% or better. And so there are still some bright spots. And I think that the play of the game, from my perspective, the one that really sticks out to me as I was watching the game, was that Kyle Filipowski's spin move in the lane on Zach Edey, where he finished with his left hand. That was a beautiful play, absolutely gorgeous play by Kyle. that was perfectly executed against a much larger player, but a less mobile player. So he spun back to his left hand, finished it nicely with his left off the glass. That was a beautiful play. On the other hand, I was watching the Memphis broadcast, and I didn't for sure catch exactly what was said, but I think what the play-by-play person, not Brevin Knight, but the actual guy who's doing the play-by-play for Memphis, what he said was that somebody from the Jazz franchise said to him that Kyle Filipowski can't guard anybody. And I think that's an interesting comment. I'm going to go back and watch that part of the game to make sure that I got that right, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. And we all know that Kyle has to improve on his defense. And there are a number of Jazz players on this team that if they want to be a contributing part of a good team, need to improve defensively. I mean, obviously, Keontae's on that list, one of the worst defensive players in the league. Bryce certainly needs to improve to get to a point where he can not be such a negative on the defensive end, where he can be, he doesn't have to be a plus defender, but he needs to be better than he is, clearly. He's not as bad as Keontae, obviously, but he still needs to improve. And Kyle's in that boat too. Kyle definitely needs to improve. And unfortunately, the Jazz have tried to play Kyle as center at times, and Kyle is clearly not a center. I mean, we've talked about that consistently. Kyle's not a center. He needs to play one of the forward positions. And a lot of that will obviously depend on who he is matched up against. What player is he trying to guard on the perimeter? But again, going back to the way the Jazz are currently playing defense, I mean, they're switching all these screens on the perimeter, just switching. Like anybody can end up on anybody at any time. And there's no real effort to just fight through these screens, fight over these screens. The Jazz, more often than not, are just switching. And it puts the big guys into a really difficult position when they're trying to guard, a much quicker player up top. It puts Lowry in a tough position. It puts Kyle in a tough position. It puts Walker in a tough position. All those guys get put into difficult positions trying to guard much quicker players up top without really a whole lot of help, in all honesty. And so the Jazz philosophy, Jazz are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and hopefully the philosophy behind it changes. I mean, like we previously said, Ainge at the end of last season said that the defense has to improve, and the defense really isn't improving. So I'm really curious to see what Ainge says in that end-of-season interview, and I hope that one of the people there in the room asks him about the defense and quotes what he said last year in that interview, and then say, well, so what needs to change and what will change? That's the thing, is what will change. You can't just say it's going to change. It actually needs to change on the court. I mean, it's easy to talk about something, but we need to see results. And even with the Jazz trying to lose games, you have to improve defensively. I mean, you just can't. The habits need to change. The schemes need to change. The philosophy needs to change. It all needs to change. So we'll see what happens. I'm really interested to see that interview with Ainge at the end of the year, and Zanuck obviously will be there as well, and see what they say about the defense, because the defense has been just really brutal, and it's it's multiple years now where the Jazz just aren't defending anybody. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the box score for tonight and see what the guys did. But overall, like we said, there were a few players that shot 50%, and Isaiah Collier, I would have pointed him out more in terms of what I was impressed with. But then you look at the end of the box score, and he had 6 turnovers, which, I mean, yes, he's a rookie point guard, but 6 turnovers is a lot of turnovers, especially when you only have 4 assists. Now, are teams playing Isaiah and Kyle and some of the other guys differently than they were earlier when those guys weren't getting all these minutes? Of course they are. So they've been scouted, and teams know what they can and can't do now, much more so than they can earlier, and what are their strengths and their weaknesses. But also the Jazz have been kind of, they aren't doing the same things as they were, and trying, where Collier was just racking up a whole bunch of assists. So the Jazz have kind of moved away from some of these things, and they're doing other stuff. So he's not getting the assist opportunities that he had in previous games. So his assists the last 5 games or so have really declined. 5 or 10 games have fallen off. So he's not getting those. He received that Rookie of the Month in February, and he's just not getting the same opportunities to record assists as he did previously. But on the other hand, for Isaiah, like you said, he did shoot 50% from the field, 7 for 13, over 50%. But he also shot 4 for 8 from 3 tonight. And that's obviously a great number for Isaiah. He hasn't been shooting the 3 particularly well. And he shot it okay for a few games a while back, but then it went back to he was really struggling from 3. So to see him hoist up 8, I mean, that's a lot of 3s for Isaiah Collier, obviously. But he did make those 3s, a good percentage of them. So that's nice to see. It's really nice. But on the other hand, Colin again, it's just he didn't get a lot of minutes, 18 minutes. He was really hot in that first quarter, and that's one of the reasons why the Jazz got out to such a good start. Was it was basically a lot of that was Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton spearheaded that early run, and they had a really nice first quarter, and then the minutes just didn't come his way, and they played other people. So Colin's not getting big numbers like I had hoped he had. Yes, he had certainly had a better night tonight than he did last game. So he did score 15 points, and he had 5 assists, so he led the team in assists. Well, a couple other guys had Johnny and Bryce had 5 assists as well. But Colin played a good game. I mean, he didn't shoot the 3 ball well, but overall he played a decent game. And so certainly the Jazz being blown out was not exactly Colin Sexton's fault, even though he had a large negative number. Pretty much everybody on the team had a really large negative number for the night in terms of plus minus. And that's going to happen when you lose by 40. So it's just one of those nights. But anyway, the other, Keontae again, Keontae really struggled shooting the ball again, and he only had 1 assist and 1 turnover as well. And he did play 23 minutes, so he played a lot more minutes than Colin did, and he's just really struggling again. Things are not trending really well for Keontae at the moment, and I'm interested to see what he does this summer and how he comes back next year. Because I think I'm not so sure that the third year for Keontae is make or break, because things need to move in a more positive direction in the third year than they are at the current time, in my opinion. I'm still not pleased with the effort. He still struggles on defense. And he's clearly not a point guard. We always said that he wasn't a point guard. I never thought he was a point guard. I'd say he's more of a combo guard. He's not really a pure 2 guard either because he is only 6 foot. He's listed as 6'4", which isn't a big 2 guard. It's not he has decent size, but he's on the smaller side of a 2 guard size at 6'4", and he's really more of a combo guard, and his assist to turnover has to be better. His overall field goal percentage obviously has to be better. It can't be in the 30s. And he has to defend at least to the point where he's not a negative on defense. And if he could just defend to the point where he was an adequate defender, I would feel better about it. But again, it's the effort things, and the effort isn't always there. I mean, it's certainly better this year than last year, and so I'm hopeful in his third year it's going to be noticeably better than it is in his second year. That's what I'm hoping for Keontae, is the effort that is there all the time on every play. And that's more of what I want to see from him than anything else. If I can see effort all the time, 100%, and really engaged and intense, and engaged when even when he's playing on defense and his guy doesn't have the ball, I still want to see him engaged. And at time last year it was brutal. I mean, he just became completely disengaged. His guy would pass the ball, or a shot would go up by another player, and he would just completely check out, and he wouldn't even pay any attention to where his guy was or what he was doing. And it was really frustrating. So, again, I want to see attention to detail and effort all the time on every play. That's my personal wish for Keontae. I'm not sold on that he's ever going to be a high percentage shooter. I actually kind of doubt that. With his current shot selection, I don't see any way for him to do that. He's so heavily weighted in threes right now. It would be shocking to see him get over 42% or so from the field. And right now he's, 39.5, something like that. So we'll see what happens with him this summer and coming into next season. It'll be interesting. But Bryce and Johnny both shot the ball reasonably well tonight, and both shot over 50. Well, Johnny shot 50%, Bryce shot over 50%. Bryce was 3 for 5 on 3, and he only took 5 3-pointers. Those are the only shots that he took. And Johnny shot 6 3-pointers, 3 for 6 on 3, 5 for 10 overall. So both of those guys shot the ball well, but again, they were both really, because the Jazz lost by so many points, by 37, they were both really negative in the plus minus category, as were pretty much all the Jazz players other than Oscar Tshiebwe. And Jaden Springer played 11 seconds, and he was a 0. So anyway, this is kind of what I think is to be expected for the final 9 games of the season after tonight. There's going to be a lot of guys getting a lot of different minutes, because it seems like the last few games, this is what Hardy's decided to do. He's going to spread the minutes around, so there's not going to be really any attempt to get guys a bunch of points. And that's kind of sad from Colin's standpoint, but I don't foresee this changing. And I think you just got to look at it as watching these last 9 games. You just have to look at it from a development perspective. What exactly is the youth doing? Because that's really the only interesting aspect of these remaining games is, how is that youth developing? How hard are they playing? Are they trying to do are they doing the right thing? Are they trying to do the right thing? Those type of things. And that's really all you can do is look at it from that standpoint. And here and there was going to be a really nice play, like the Filipowski play tonight, where he made the spin move in the lane and finished with the left hand on Edey. It was a fantastic play, and that kind of makes the whole night worth watching, just that play itself. I'll have to find that play later and rewatch it a couple of times, because that really was a fantastic spin move. So anyway, let's look at the tankathon for the current race to the bottom at the moment. And Charlotte did play tonight, and they lost, so that didn't help the Jazz. But still, the number one pick right now in terms of the lottery odds is Washington at 15 wins, and then Utah's in the second position at 16 wins, and then Charlotte third position at 18 wins, and New Orleans at fourth position at 20 wins. So it's safe to say that the Jazz at this point, it's basically nearly impossible for them to fall out of the top 3 positions. They clearly aren't going to fall out of the top 3 positions. It's possible that they still make it into that third position and Charlotte takes number 2. I doubt it. I don't think the Jazz are going to allow that to happen, but it's possible. But the real key is, can the Jazz get to that number 1 spot with that Washington currently holds? We'll see. I mean, Washington has lost 5 in a row. The Jazz have now lost 3 in a row. Charlotte has lost 3 in a row. So all these teams are losing. It's clear they're all trying to lose, and there's a bunch of teams. I mean, it's just not these four. There are so many teams trying to lose games right now. I mean, this is one of the things that obviously the NBA has to address, so that even the teams that aren't good, that are trying to develop players, have incentive to win. And we all want that. Watching teams purposely lose and throw games is not good for any of us trying to watch these games and trying to make these games enjoyable, because it would clearly be a lot more enjoyable if the Jazz were able to win these games and tried to win these games, for sure. Because it gets old when you see 40-point losses, and when your team's clearly not trying to even be competitive. I mean, it's a struggle. It's a struggle for all of us. But anyway, I think that is all that we are going to talk about tonight. I mean, it was just one of those games, and we'll see what happens in the next one. But anyway, please, for all of you watching on YouTube, we would like you to like, share, and subscribe. And you can also follow us on X at JazzSmack. And we wish everybody a really wonderful evening. Good night, everybody.